Okay, guys, you just want to recap what we talked about last time. We talked about what is the project management, what is the project manager, and what is the characteristic of the project manager, and what is expected you as a project manager. And the project manager, again, is the main functionality or responsibility will be like planning, scheduling, coordinating, and working with other people to achieve a special goal. Working with other people, but 3 lines under working with other people. This mean communication. This mean people skill. This mean ability to deal with different level of hierarchy in your work, ability to deal with different type of mentality. So it's a lots of skill that is encapsulated in dealing with people. And the to have a successful project, you have to have experience. So more you manage a project, you most likely to run a successful project. And statistically, 97% of the successful project was run by an experienced project manager. And the skills for the project manager, you have to know about body languages, know about the standard and the regulation in your area. You have to understand your environment, and you have to understand the hierarchy of the your organization. And soft skill, you have to have a lot of soft skills in any job advertisement. They are asking for a project manager. You will see the most skill that is required, like people skill, leadership, listening, ethical behavior, integrity, verbal communication, team building, and conflict resolution, conflict management, critical thinking, problem solving, and balance in priorities. If I will ask, what is a conflict resolution? Who can answer this question? Give me an example of conflict resolution within the project scope, within project.
ممكن يكون إنه زي في different opinions, different ways of working between two people or more.
So it's like problem solving.
We have to solve this problem by managing ourselves or organizing tasks.
This is Elias talking, right? Conflict resolution. From the name, there is a conflict, يعني little problem. يعني صار في argument between team members. Maybe about a task, certain task. Oh, you're supposed to finish this task. No, you're supposed to finish this task. And start to be an argument, and there is a problem in the horizon. So it's not like an opinion differences versus the actual job is not being done, or somebody saying this is not my task and another said it's my task, and there is a problem start to show up. This is an example of the conflict. And as a project manager, you have to have this skill. And it depends on the project. Project management has to have different skill. For example, large projects, you expected to have a big team, so you have to have an obvious leadership skills, and you must to have a prior experience with leading a project is a must. Not like in a small project where you can get a junior project manager to lead these project. In the large projects, you have to have a specific and more accurate skills, verbal skill, team building skill, and so forth. In a project where is there is lots of risk, meaning we don't know exactly what is if we can accomplish certain thing because it relies on certain unknown situations. We need a project manager that he has risk management skills, expectation management, again leadership and people skill and so forth. And there is a different type of project, like very novel project. The project are like it a clear vision and goals. These are, it's easier to lead, but it's still you have to have a good project manager to deal with people and set the expectation. If you wanted to define what is a leadership or a leader who focuses in long-term goals and big pictures, while the manager deal with day to day. So leaders, you have to look at the end goals. Management, you need to deal with daily task. And the project manager must have both of these skills as a leadership and as a manager. So what is the distinguish between a leader and the manager, guys?
إنه المانجر لازم يواجه يعني كل يوم لازم يواجه مشكلة يتعامل معها.
يعني okay, leader. الديفينيشن موجود أمامكم يا شباب.
The manager focuses on the employees and making sure that each employee does the specific task assigned to him.
Okay.
To keep the flow of work going, while leader takes more time to research, for instance, make predictions on what the stock market is gonna be. For instance, if it's a company working in the stock, how they could take precautions, how could they maximize their profits, looking 1 year, 2 years into the future.
Exactly. So long term versus day to day. Long term
Yes.
versus 30 day. Another skill which is very important, I just highlighted, he inspires people to reach the goal. يعني بحفزهم، بعطيهم الموتيفيشن، بعطيهم الانرجيز to reach the goals. And pretty much this is what we want to recap on. Just want to go on a few things before we end this chapter and start in our next subject. Want you to be introduced to some of the tools that is used by the project manager. This is a slide show you what is Gantt chart is. Gantt chart is one of the tools that you will be learning how to use, and we use in certain software or a project management software to create a Gantt chart. And hopefully we will be able to use Microsoft project. And Lena, you said you have the executable?
نعم دكتور.
The executable for the project manager?
Yes, I have one. إذا بدهم بحط لهم إياه على الإي-ليرنينج. بس أنا عندي نسخة 2016، فاللي عنده أعلى من 2016 على جهازه I think بده يروح لخيار تاني مثل الأوبن بروجكت وهيك.
مهندس انا بدي بديل له عشان اشتغل على الماك، انه عندي ما بيشتغل
أنت
الماك.
استعمل أوبن بروجكت، هذاك الفصل الطلاب استعملوه وكان أمورهم تمام.
اوكي.
أنا رح أشرح يعني يا عبد الله. أنا عبد الله رح أشرح على على السوفت وير اللي عندي اللي هو تاع المايكروسوفت اللي هو بروجكت مانجمنت. بس شو الفكرة؟ أنت تبع معي يعني اطلع علي كيف بشتغل. لما تفتح الأوبن بروجكت صح هو اسم سوفت وير تاني بس بالضبط نفس الخطوات، يعني أنت ما رح تتغير.
Okay. So just to give you an idea, this is a Gantt project. It is a tools that give you the ability to organize your work breakdown structure or tasks that is you set in your project with a time, lines, and priorities. This is another tool that is you can use. It's called network diagram. Network diagram, it's very important to calculate critical path, and we will know these things when we explain it in details. Just to give you an idea what we going to be working on. Also, I want to mention that there is something called Project Management Institution, which provide some guidance about what is the project management, defined processes. It was founded in 1969. And it has by 2008, this is statistic is old, has about 275,000 members worldwide, and you can join this BMI by paying some fees. BMI also, this is very important. If you want to be a project manager, think about it as a career for you. Project management there's a certificate for a project manager to be identified as a good candidate for project management, which is PMP, called Project Management Professional Certification. To get a good chance when you apply for project management, to get a job, you will have to have a BMP certificate, and there is exam like any other certificate. There is an exam, you have to get it and pass to get this certificate. And there is a different certificate, but it's all evolve around the project management process. And with a statistic, the number of the BMB certified between 93 to 2008, it increased from 1 to 300,018. And by now, I think the statistic has increased by the double at least. Probably there is around maybe I'm not sure, but at least it increases by the double. Okay. And this is all about this chapter. Any question, guys, from you? This is
No.
an introduction. Is it interested to you guys to be a project manager so far? In most of the people who are very technical don't like this kind of job, but some people who are well organized like this kind of job. Okay. Next subject, we will talk about the project management. We will start the project management process by talking about project scope management. As you know, there are different area in the project management process, and managing the scope is very important part of the process. That's why we have to understand importance of good project scope management, and we have to discuss the method of collecting, eliciting requirement that meets the stakeholder need, and how to define the project scope and describe the content of the project scope in the actual scope statement. So you have to be able to write scope statement for your own idea. And also we will talk about how to create work breakdown structure by using certain approach or technique, starting by asking question and answering this question, and this will eventually help you in mapping the task or mini task in your mind to create your projects. And we will talk about other issue with the scope and how we control the scope. And controlling the scope is very important process, because as I told you, if the scope is not well defined to the client, you will be in a big fuzz. Remember the example I always give you? Customer usually come and ask you for an apple, but after you start to work on the project, you find out he is looking for an orange, not an apple. So you have to avoid this situation by defining a well written scope statement. And what is a project scope or scope management? The scope refers to all work involved in creating the products of the project and the process used to create. So it involves what? Product and the process. So the scope statement, you will have to define these both things. What is you going to do and how you gonna do it? What and how? And also what is need to be delivered to as an end product to your customer. So you need to deliver an apple, not an orange. It has to be defined what is an apple and how you're gonna do this this apple. And also, the process include what document you need to deliver. Like you need to deliver vision statement. You have to define it in the scope. You need to deliver, for example, project plan. You need to define in the scope and when you want to deliver it. You're gonna be meeting every week for the next 2 months. So you have to document this. You will have to deliver meeting minutes after each meeting. What is meeting minutes? Is basically the team meets. You have to write what you agree on the meeting. This information called meeting minutes to be delivered after each minute. So the product is the deliverable. In another word, the product. In another word, in our world, what we're talking about is a software, right? Or software or hardware, depending on your idea. The process that is related to deliverable is an example of it as meeting minutes, as a document that you agree on it in the scope. Also, the scope management includes what is or is not included in the project. If the customer comes after you handed the project and told you, oh, I don't like the layout of the user profile screen. Or a better example, a user profile screen does not have the social security number or رقم الوطني, but the specification did not say that you have to provide the social security number. This is what is in, what is not in. So in your requirement, in the functional requirement, you have to decide what is in the project. In the scope, you cannot list everything that is specifically in the project, but the scope management will tell you to know the functional requirement, you have to refer to requirement document. The requirement document is a different deliverable that the customer has to go in and read it. In that requirement document, you will have to specify exactly the functional and non-functional requirement for the project. See, it's a whole process, but the scope, it's part of the scope management. You have to define. If the customer comes and tell you this, if you go to the requirement document and this is listed and you are not implemented, that means the customer is right. That means you're missing some of your work and you have to complete. And this means more time on you. This means the project management, or if it is more time on you, that means money, resource, deadline, and a lot of problem. If the specification did not mention this requirement, you come to the customer and tell them, wait a minute, go back, go look at the specification or the requirement. This is not included. So the problem is ended there, and the customer cannot complain because it's written. And at this time, to make the customer happy, okay, if you want it, you have to do what change request to include this new feature. So it is important to list what is in, what is not in the project, in the scope. Okay, as a process, if you look at it, what we need to do in the scope management, you need to collect requirement, gather requirement, and in our case, guys, this question for you: when we gonna start gathering the requirement? زيد.
مفروض بلشنا.
دكتور.
When we gonna start gathering the requirement for the application that or idea in this class?
بالريسيرش.
Research. That's the very first step we have to do, and based on the research, we start our requirement formation. Right?
بالضبط.
مين حكى بلشنا؟
أنا قلت الياس.
Ilyas. Yes, exactly. We already started. If you have your idea already, and you start to basically gather the information. Based on this information, you will be able to know the visibility of the application. Then after you know the visibility of the application, actually, you start to set the requirement.
دكتور عندي سؤال.
تفضل صح.
هسه احنا بحالتنا مش ما راح ناخذ من الكلاينت نعمل جاذرينج او ريكويرمنتس، لانه احنا اللي حنحط الريكويرمنتس وحنمشي عليها، هيك مفروض صح؟ لانه احنا اللي عملنا الايديا، مش ما اخذناها من حد.
Yes, انت عندك you have an idea, right?
Yes.
Based on the idea, you need to see the visibility. The main thing from your research is to see if the application is visible or visible, which is, in other word, to know how you do simple research, and based on the research, analyze, therefore come up to a hypothesis. Right? When you come up to the hypothesis, you need to do your work on your own. بس research, it could help you in the requirement كمان. يعني مثلا انت you have an project idea, right?
Yes.
By project, don't you want to ask the user what feature would you like in the project? In this way, you gather the requirement from the user himself.
Yes, I get the idea.
Okay. Any questions? No question. We continue. Okay, so collecting requirement, this is the very first step. And when you wanted to collect the requirement, you have to define the feature and the function of the product. Feature and the function of your product. And remember, this process is like building a block. You cannot come and build the higher layer before you build the base layers. So if you do the requirement gathering correct, it'll be easy for you to create a work breakdown structure. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
We want to take a few minute break, guys, right?
Okay.
A few
Okay.
minute breaks.
Okay, doctor.
Let's say 5 minutes. 5 minutes. We will rejoin at 3:15.
Okay, doctor.
Okay.
Guys,
Yes.
okay. So gathering requirement, then defining the scope. When you define the scope, we have to create something called project charter, and the requirement document should be created, and the scope statement should be also ready. After we have all this in space, in a place, we start to think about work breakdown structure. And basically work breakdown is
وهلا بس عشان عم باخذ محاضرة هلا بشوف سيارة ابوي عشان الاسبوع الفات. الكفوف اذا بدك تيجي تاخذ كفوف تعال خذ.
mute guys. Okay, just I muted myself while. Okay, so the work breakdown structure is basically subdividing your project to smaller tasks. Why we do that? It is very easy to think about small tasks that rather than the whole project. You can create the project, like for example, divide it into hierarchical organization to be able to think logically in how you implement the application. For example, you first come with the idea. I wanna create a cabin. Okay, you know that is the cabin has doors, has shelves, has certain design. Maybe you have drawers and so forth. So you know the big picture, but to accomplish this, you have to have a task to buy the wood, for example. You have a task to get the tools to create the cabin. So you have to a task to create the design, and these are example of task or dividing the project of creating a cabin to a smaller a project. Like for example, creating the blueprint for the cabin, you have to basically know about the measurement, know about the other thing that will help you to design the cabin. So this is what we're talking about work breakdown structure, is dividing your bigger project to a smaller project or smaller tasks. Then after you have this in hand, you can review all the deliverable by verifying the scope. So there is a stage where you need to verify what is being done is acceptable. And the scope management process is also controlling the process of how you want to manage change throughout the project life cycle, especially because I really care about, while I'm running the project, there is a different change, there's some changes in the requirement that will affect the scope. How I am gonna deal with it. This has to be defined also. There's an example, present an example here. It shows you project, scope, management summary. So there's a planning phase. You need to collect a requirement. This is an actual summary for the scope management. You need to collect a requirement, and in the requirement, you have to define what is in the requirement, collecting the requirement process. You have to deliver requirements document, requirements management plan, requirement traceability matrix. In the planning also, there is a process to define a scope. The output of this process, project scope statement, project document update. Also in the planning, you have to create work breakdown structure. You have to deliver the work breakdown structure, and it is dictionary and the baseline for the scope and the project document update. So you see, every process has an output, every process an output, and the output is the actual deliverable from you as a project manager. In the monitoring and control, the process verifying the scope, accepted deliverable, and then another output, change requests, project management, project document update, and control scope process. It has also a lot of deliverable. The idea of showing you the example is to show you how it is being managed. It's not necessary all projects adhere to the same thing, but probably the verifying the scope, there is some certain requirement from the user. You have to include it in the output here. So these are as an example, but it's not necessary as a fit set for each project. How we collect requirements. So what are the requirements? It's basically what is in simple, what the application.
دكتور في الصوت مش واضح كويس.
Not like that. Is it better?
دكتور هو نفس الصوت في قطع كثير، يمكن السيجنال تعبان شوي. ما
are you sharing
وثالث.
something?
نعم دكتور.
Let me turn off the video. Probably it will be better. How is it now?
هيك أوضح دكتور.
Probably the bandwidth the problem.
Okay.
مهندس انت حط اشي اون سكرين نشوفه لانه احنا مش شايفين شاشتك.
Yeah, there is the slides.
مش موجود.
شابتر سمري
مش مبين لنا.
يس السلايدز مبينين. انا
لا،
مبين عندي.
سمري مهندسة.
اللي مبين
انا مو مبين عندي.
انا مو مبين.
فيصل اطلع ورد فوق.
Okay, I wanna.
يلا.
Yeah.
دكتور أنا برضو مش مبين عندي شيء حاطين.
هسه هيك دكتور راح، يمكن الدكتور ما يعمل شير.
No, I'm still sharing. But
هيك راح
okay,
دكتور.
stay. Okay, let's stay in the class and let me stop sharing and reshare again. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Stay in the class. Now. You got it?
Oh yes,
guys.
Yes, it's working.
تمام دكتور هيك تمام.
Okay.
أنا ما عندي شيء، مش مبين أي شيء.
صالح.
هيك تمام، هيك تمام دكتور.
Okay. Okay, so the process of gathering requirement is very important. It's basically it's the way to understand what is the project's all about, what is in the project, what's going to be out of the project. The requirement may require you to meet a lot with the stakeholders to understand how is it being done. In our case, it is an idea of project. You have to do the research. You have to do the research and you have to decide based on your idea how to elicit your information. So elicitation is the very first step to know the requirement. So you have to elicit the information first. In a real world scenario, you have to go sit down with the customer themselves. For example, you are a manager for a project, you have some consultant, your company delivers a certain product, let's say software or business process solution automation to do, for example, or to automate certain processes within the business environment. You will have to go actually and meet with the people who are performing this process the manual way. So you have to gather the current process. Why you want to do that? Because you have to understand this process from the customer themselves. Because when you change or you transform this process from the manual to automation, it will affect these people. So you will have to inform them exactly how it is being done by adhering to the their process, how they are doing it, because you really don't want to make a big change in their life when you don't make them discomfortable, don't make them unhappy about changing to using the automation instead of the manual. So you need to understand from the user who are going to use the system. These are the main ones. You need to understand from the stakeholder, which is the higher management, is what they want exactly. So these task all it is within elicitation of your elicitation stage in gathering the requirement of the project. Then after that, you have all the data. You have all the data, and you need to analyze it. So in your case, elicitation is doing the research by qualitative and quantitative methods. After you gather the data, you need to analyze it. And based on the analysis, you need to come up with the specification and validation. Okay. Iterative approach. Question?
yes question. عشان نعمل validation لازم يكون قصدك إنه ال customer to validate your hypothesis على شو هو بده؟
لا، هون ال validation بالنسبة إلك based on the analysis. أنت you analyze your outputs or your data. That mean you validate it for the project.
if it's true في errors فيها هيك يعني.
No, if it is true, it is a valid idea, or we should go on with this project.
Okay. So بس for the idea.
Exactly, for the idea. يعني this is one piece. بعدين ننتقل للproject management. Research is something, you know, it stop by validating your idea, supported by the elicitation, which is the research, and the analyzing the data, come up with the research, and come up eventually with your hypothesis. اللي هي proposal, project proposal.
Okay.
Okay. So in real world, when you do a requirement gathering, it's very important to do it in the iterative method. يعني you need to sit down from the customer first time, and the second time, and the third time. Sometimes, exactly like I explained to you, when you do your questionnaire, you have to be very creative in asking the same question different way to be able to pull the accuracy. Probably most of you, when you answer a questionnaire, you notice that they ask you the same question different way. They want to make sure of the information. In real world, you need to be direct and specific. The iterative method, it will help you as a consultant or as a project manager. If you, after you do the first iteration, you understand the system more. So you come and analyze the data, and then you think, oh, this area I need to ask this, I need to ask this. Then you go to the second iteration, you ask more information to be understanding to the user requests to come up with the accurate requirements. And we're still talking about scope management. Gathering the requirement is the very first step, and if the requirement is not accurate, that means we'll be in a big mess later. So you have to do it the right way. Just to give you an example, how important is this? If we find any problem in the cost, if you are in the requirement phase, the cost will be basically nothing. If you go in the design phase and you find there is a problem in the requirement, it will cost you more. And further you go in the project, further the cost will be more. So if you find it in the testing, will be way more than you find it in the requirement. You got the idea, right? So earlier you find the problems, it's lower the cost, less the time, and the project will be more on target. Okay, method to collect the requirement: interviews, focus group, decision making, and these people are important to get their ideas. Questionnaires, survey, observation, prototype, soft tools. you guys start to make the connection between what we're doing, we're gonna do. Like on questionnaire surveys is basically probably what we are doing. Maybe an interview if you wanted to do a qualitative, focus group, also type of what, quantitative, qualitative. مين بيقدر يجاوب؟
أنا بجاوب.
تفضل.
What's the difference between qualitative and quantitative?
لا
صح هذا هو السؤال.
focus group يعني a small group that is relevant to the problem. إذا بدي أجي أنا I gather from them some requirement. هذا type of quantitative or qualitative.
It is qualitative.
Exactly. It's a qualitative. It's relevant to interviewing. So you have focus group, you taking their opinion, and it depends on the method you taking the information actually also. And type simple questionnaires is type of quantitative, qualitative. No answer? طب observation.
It depends on how you
دكتور بس
design
يمكن السؤال الصوت بقطع مش واضح كثير.
والله هذه problem if the sound is not clear.
دكتور هو مثلا أنا عندي واضح، بس أظن لأنه الجو برا أنت شايف كيف، إلا بعض الطلاب يعني يتأثروا شوي، بس مش مشكلة. هم إذا حكوا لك يعني إنه الصوت مش واضح ارجع عيد لهم وهو برجع الصوت بيجي مرة تانية منيح يعني.
عبد الله
بس انت
what
ريكورد
are you
ما تبعت لنا اياه انه الصوت بيكون كلير كامل. يعني هلا مش مبين عندنا الصوت كويس، بس الريكورد بيكون مبين.
عمال يا شباب بيسجل من جهته هو، فلما يبعت المحاضرة حيكون الصوت كتير واضح، مش من عندكم التسجيل.
what you using are you using your mobile to watch the lecture عبد الله؟
لا دكتور اللابتوب.
laptop. What kind of connection you have?
قصدك نت انترنت؟
انترنت.
واي فاي.
انه
قصدك دي اس ال ولا وايرلس دي مودم؟
انه واي فاي ولا
لا ما
في شيء؟
مش دي سي ال.
sometimes يعني ال speed of the net يعني بتحكم الجو بحكم but like
انه كان كويس.
طيب ماشي. Try you guys mute when you are not talking. This is important.
Okay.
If you're not talking, if you don't need to talk, mute. I can mute you all, guys. بس يعني want you to get to the habit إنك to mute yourself. This is very important for the quality of the voice from my لأنه في echoes. It goes back and forth that utilize the bandwidth between us. Okay.
اوكي دكتور.
Let me see team, not team chat. You guys still there?
Yes.
دكتور.
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
You still see the screen? It will get better. I'm sure it will get better. Okay. Now I can see participant here. أنس موجود؟
أنا موجود دكتور. بس دكتور بدي أسألك، أخذت حضور غياب؟ لأنه أنا كان عندي مشكلة في الإنترنت واضطريت أتأخر.
أخذنا حضور غياب، نعم.
طب دكتور أنا غايب اليوم صح؟
Let's not talk about this now.
Okay.
Let's try to be on time يا أنس.
دكتور احنا متى اخذنا حضور غياب؟
Just don't come up with any.
أنا عشان النت عندي ما عندي مشكلة في النت، يعني على شغال من 3G شبكة على اللابتوب بتاعت التليفون.
For equality of for equality of voice, please use chat. For any question, use chat. Okay. What's your question? Post it on the chat. And ask it. If I ask a question, please raise your hand so you by thumbs up in the chat so I can unmute you. This way we ensure the quality of the voice. Okay, thumbs up for okay. Okay, so method of collecting requirement, we agree on it. And please review what is quantitative, what's qualitative, and try to identify between them. And one of the requirement deliverable is document requirement, the requirement that has or state all the requirement. It will include diagram, videos, text, images, anything, any media that it will serve the purpose, your purposes. Because each situation is different, probably the medium will have to be different. And the main thing is to describe how the project requirement will be analyzed and documented and managed. And there is something called requirement traceability matrix. It's basically a simple table. List all the requirement and the status of each requirement. Ensure all the requirement being addressed. This is an example of requirement traceability matrix. I want you to be familiar with this terminology. It's new to you, but we're gonna just introduce it to you to like a takeaway to understand there is something called project traceability, requirement traceability matrix. And usually you give the requirement a number and a name and categories and source and the status where you are in the requirement
مهندس صوتك راح، ما في صوت. مهندس علي.
المهندس طلع برا الميتنج.
النت شكله فصل النت.
بس المهندس الكهرباء ففصل النت من عنده. هلا أنا بفتح السلايدز وبكمل معاكم دقيقة. شوف، هي أنا رح أكمل معكم، بس بدي أفتح السلايدز وأشيرهم معاكم وأكمل لكم شرح. مهندس علي من عنده فصلة الكهرباء، بس خليني أنا أفتحه وبرجعكم.
مهندس الصوت مش واضح بالمرة.
مهندس صوتك
طب هيك الصوت واضح؟
برضه نفس الشيء مهندس.
طيب هيك
ما هي كويس مهندسة.
ألو، سامعين؟
لا مهندس سامعينك كويس.
أوكي تمام، يلا تمام. السلايدز عمالهم بيفتحوا، فبس يفتحوا بشير معكم السكرين وبنبلش. اسمعوا شباب، أصلا هو مش ضايل غير 10 أقل من 10، وبنكمل المرة الجاي. أوكي
تمام مهندسة.
اوكي
يعطيك العافية.
يعطيك العافية.
تمام.
اوكي مهندس.
خلص أنا هلا لأنه أنا اللي عندي بده خلص اطلعوا يعني روحوا، بنكمل يوم إن شاء الله. بكرة بنكمل من محل ما وقفنا.
تمام
مهندس بس حاط
تمام
أنا
اوكي مهندس.
تمام.
دكتور.
أنا أصلا أنا كنت حطيتك أنا حكيت له إنه أنت دخلت متأخر 25 دقيقة، حتى مع هذا الإشي بعدل لك حضورك. تمام؟
يعني المهندس حضور
يعني
صح؟
هنا المهندس إيش راح يحكي؟ لأنه أنت متأخر 25 دقيقة فتش.
هو أنا مهندس كان عشان عندي مشكلة
نعم.
الإنترنت، يعني شبكت من 3G على اللابتوب عشان يرضى يشبك.
أوكي أنا خلص، أنا هلا بحكي للمهندس يعني على الأغلب نحسبك ليت. أوكي
أوكي، اسلم عليك. مع السلامة مهندس.